A very curious fact is that Morrison used to own Bowmore until they sold Bowmore. But how are you, dear friends of Talking About Whiskey, your favorite whiskey channel? My name is Eduardo, and here we are again in Madrid, the capital of Spain, to make a new and very interesting video, I guarantee it. Well, as I always say, a channel called Talking About Whiskey. So, what is it going to be about? Well, whiskey. So, what do we have here today? Today we have Mac Talla, a whiskey with a very strange name. Mac Talla is something in Gaelic, I don't know what it means. Islay single malt Scotch whiskey in its Terra expression. It is a whiskey with 46% volume, non-chill filtered and without colouring. An Islay whiskey, but from an independent bottler. A whiskey that, if you look here, it says Morrison. There is a lot of speculation about use hand. Well, this was hand selected by Jamie Morrison, who is from Smoky and Fresh. Very smoky and very refreshing. It is Morrison is, let's say, a company that has a distillery and makes its own whiskies. In fact, they have some quite unknown whiskies. But in this case, this whiskey is, let's say, it appears as an independent bottling, which is a bit unusual at first for a brand that, let's say, does independent bottlings, if I'm not mistaken, but then also does blended and has a distillery. So I don't know, it's a bit strange. It has another flavor called Old Perth and another one called Broadar, a type of blended Scotch whiskey liqueur. And then Mac Talla and this and Carnmore, which seem to be the independent expressions, Mac Talla and Carnmore, but it's strange because they have a distillery. It is a strange thing that they bottle independently and do not have a distillery. One very curious fact, Usand, is that Morrison used to own Bowmore until they sold Bowmore. And they sold Bowmore, but now there is a group called Morrison Bowmore or something like that. So it's quite a convoluted story when it comes to brands, isn't it? Why did this group sell? Is there a group called Morrison Bowmore Distillers, who obviously own Bowmore, Auchentoshan and Glengarioch? Is that correct? Oh, Kento-san. Personally, he's a guy I don't find amusing at all in general, but I do like Bowmore and Glengarioch. So, what's going on? If this is an independent bottling called Islay Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, which you already know can be labelled as Islay Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, even if it's not your whiskey, as long as it's a whiskey distilled and aged in Islay. It certainly looks like there's Bowmore here. Let's see, we can't know for sure. It could be anything as long as it's from Islay, because I insist that it indicates it's from Islay. But man, if they have been the owners of Bowmore, well, I don't know. It looks like it could be that it probably is Bowmore that's in here, but I insist we don't know. Well, let's start pouring a little, and it's a whiskey that truly has several expressions. It has this expression which is, let's say, the entry-level one from the distillery, then another 15-year-old one, a cask strength. This one is 46% and is the basic expression you can buy from them. You already know that every day I am more attracted to, and like independent bottlers more, and this is certainly one of them. Bottle, if you look closely, very, very beautiful, very classic, but I don't know, I really like the labeling, I really like the shape with this base here that's wider. Very, very beautiful bottle with the Morrison seal here, the Emmy in relief. The box is very well done. I don't know, it has quality, it has good screen printing, it has the seal marked here. A whiskey that costs around $40 in Spain, and well, let's see what we find here. With it being non-chill filtered, without colouring, and it is a very, very light whiskey with very little colour and 46% volume. 2009? Let's see. It moves with a certain density in the glass. There is a layer of glycerin, a layer of oil around the glass, quite significant. It moves a little lightly but interesting. Let's see what we find on the nose with this Mac Talla. Honestly, the first note is very iodine-like with a lot of smoke but very balanced. It's a very balanced 46%, not light but very pleasant. It has everything. It has the cereal. It has the smoke, it has the iodine, it has the saline note, the maritime note, the barbecue note, like fish barbecue. I mean barbecue, this is a bit tar-like too. A note that is perhaps a bit synthetic. A little, let's say petroleum-like, not tarred. Certainly a very pleasant note. Very, I mean, it quite reminds me of an Ardbeg, that style of whiskey, but it's something between an Ardbeg 1 Lafroig, something quite medicinal as well. 2009. In this whiskey is somewhat dry also on the nose, with a very interesting cereal note. It certainly has a prototypical nose, 100% of a powerful Islay whiskey. It is a smoky whiskey, a whiskey with a heavy smoke load, meaning it is not a whiskey with just a bit of smoke that has some smoke. No, it is a predominantly smoky and iodine-rich whiskey. It has everything. Smoke, the coast, iodine, the sea. And it is also very earthy, with a damp note like slightly damp wood, slightly aged wood. There are also some licorice notes, somewhat herbal. I don't know. They don't tell us anything about the woods. They don't comment on anything. My opinion, my impression is that it is quite ex-bourbon, but there might be something of some type of wine. It is very pleasant on the nose, extremely good. Let's see how it tastes. Cheers. Look, smoky whiskey. It reminds me of a kind of hybrid between, let's say, Ardbeg, Laphroaig. It could be anything. It could be Laphroaig, it could be Ardbeg, it could be Caol Ila. It's very difficult to identify. It certainly doesn't remind me at all of a Bowmore. It seems like a much more intense whiskey than the Bowmores I've tried. But of course, it also depends if it's B-humor. It depends on how they have distilled it, aged it, and what these people have picked up. Now it becomes a little sweeter, a bit more saline. It is intense on the palate. Smoke, iodine. It appears a bit not too sweet, a bit astringent, a bit dry, but very pleasant. Very rich whiskey, prototypical of smoky, iodine Islay whiskey. Truly extraordinary, truly rich for the price it has. It is evidently a young whiskey. I don't know if it is around 4 or 5 or 6 years old or something like that, but truly a whiskey that I recommend. It is a strong whiskey. It is a whiskey for those who like smoke. It is a coffee whiskey for the true coffee lovers, as we might say when someone has a great passion for coffee. 2009 is the first Mac Talla I try, and it is truly delicious. In other words, it did not disappoint me at all. It is warm with a long finish. Lots of wood, lots of smoke, very interesting, very rich. A truly very, very recommendable whiskey. For example, I don't understand how Laphroaig 10 is not this. Laphroaig Select are not these. These are whiskeys that are truly affordable. We talk about Laphroaig, as brands. These brands are doing like, I don't know, even the Smooth Bowmore. How do you make those whiskeys? Laphroaig 10 is not cheap. It is by no means a cheap whiskey. It is a much better whiskey than Laphroaig 10 in my opinion, due to its sheer strength, sheer load, and sheer intensity. It is certainly not a summer whiskey. I do not recommend it at all for that. Well, not at all. I mean, it's certainly not the most suitable whiskey for warm, very warm weather, but an extraordinary whiskey, a very, very rich whiskey with a very reasonable price. So, nothing, well, look, very happy. You know, a 2009, another whiskey you can try, that you can taste, and I think you will like it quite a lot, and it's economical, at least in Spain. Very well, gentlemen, that's it for today's tasting. I hope you liked it, had fun, and learned something. Remember to always drink in moderation, please. See you in the next video. If you want, like, comment, and subscribe since you've made it this far. Be very happy, which is undoubtedly the most important thing in all cases. Take good care of yourself. See you soon. Bye. A hug.